Detroit, and I came out here to show why I'm pound for pound number one.
All right, so Lauren Price, is that the fight that you want next?
Yes, if I can get it in between December and January. If not, I would love to fight against Michaela or Tam Tebow. She got the rest of the 3 belts.
You said 47. I said 54. You said 47.
On the plan, you said 54.
I didn't say yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. You are so very fucking drunk. I ain't never do drunk. Oh my God. 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 Look at that shit. 100K. 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 Catch up.
Listen, at the end of the day, consequences will be paid, and I'm going to just leave it at that.
It's just war.
Were you surprised that we're going to see the consequences in the ring, or we're going to see them in the courtroom?
Our consequences, baby. If you read the Bible, you know what a consequence is, all right?
Claressa says she's willing to fight Shadeja Green, but she wants an undercard. How do you feel about that?
I could never be an undercard to a Claressa Shields. You hear me when I say that? Could never. She need to get in the gym. Shadeja's hungry. Shadeja will beat her. Next question.
What's your final message to Claressa?
Next question.
Yeah.
One night in Atlanta didn't just change the landscape of women's boxing. It set off an absolute nuclear meltdown, and the fallout is currently scorching through the entire combat sports industry. If you thought the self-proclaimed Joy T. Claressa Shields was going to take her victory lap and quietly celebrate reclaiming her throne at 160 pounds, then you clearly don't know the first thing about the undisputed Queen of Chaos. Stepping into the ring at State Farm Arena, Shields completely dismantled Kaye Scott in a brutal, systematic destruction that forced the corner to throw in the towel by the 6th round. But let's be honest with each other for a second. Nobody is talking about the belts. Nobody is talking about the flawless body shots or the lightning-fast combinations. The second that referee waved off the fight, Claressa grabbed the microphone and turned a routine post-fight interview into an unhinged, scorched-earth declaration of war against her arch-rival, Alycia Baumgardner. We are talking about a deep-seated, toxic feud that literally physicalized in a VIP section brawl, triggered a lifetime ban from Jake Paul's most valuable promotions, and sparked threats of massive legal action. But right when the entire industry thought Claressa was cornered, she fired back with a series of bombshell revelations that exposed the dirty promotional politics, fake personas, and behind-the-scenes cover-ups threatening to blow the lid off the entire sport. Are we watching the greatest rivalry in women's boxing, or a complete system collapse? Grab your popcorn because we are diving straight into the deep end of this absolute madness. To truly understand the absolute nightmare unfolding right now in the world of professional boxing, you have to peel back the layers of a scandal so convoluted, so messy, and so absurd that it makes high-stakes political thrillers look like a walk in the park. Everyone is focused on the glitz and glamour, the bright lights of Atlanta, and the shiny championship belts wrapped around Claressa Shields' waist. But behind that picture-perfect victory over Kaye Scott lies a sprawling web of bad blood, corporate backstabbing, and a war of egos that has been quietly decaying the foundation of women's combat sports for months. Let us set the stage properly because the mainstream sports media is terrified of telling you what is actually happening. They want to sell you the fairy tale narrative of a triumphant champion returning to her natural weight class, putting on a clinic, and reclaiming her glory in front of 16,000 screaming fans. But if you have been paying attention to the whispers behind closed doors, you know that the fight inside the State Farm Arena was merely a sideshow. The real war, the dirty, unfiltered, radioactive war, is happening between Claressa Shields, Alycia Baumgardner, and the corporate puppet masters at most valuable promotions who are desperately trying to control the narrative. This is not just your average trash talk dynamic where two fighters sell a pay-per-view match with manufactured drama. This is a visceral, deeply personal hatred that broke past the boundaries of sportsmanship long ago. We are talking about two elite athletes who cannot exist in the same zip code without security teams having to form a human barricade between them. To understand how we got to this point, you have to go back to the catalyst event that the mainstream outlets tried to sweep under the rug, only for it to blow up in their faces in the most chaotic way imaginable. Back in May, during an high-profile combat sports event in California, the atmosphere inside an exclusive invitation-only VIP lounge was supposed to be all about networking and elite athlete appearances. Instead, it became the scene of an absolute crime against professional decorum. On one side, you had Claressa Shields, the self-proclaimed GOAT, enjoying her status as a global sports icon. On the other side, you had Alycia Baumgardner, a fierce, unapologetic superstar in her own right, who represents everything Claressa despises about the new age of boxing promotion. Witnesses who were inside that private area describe an atmosphere that instantly turned icy the moment both women made eye contact. It did not take long for the verbal jabs to start flying. What began as subtle side eyes and whispered insults quickly escalated into a full-blown, screaming confrontation in front of corporate executives, Netflix higher-ups, and a room full of Hollywood celebrities. According to internal reports and eyewitness accounts that leaked shortly after, Baumgardner aggressively stepped into Claressa's personal space, uttering a sentence that would instantly trigger a physical catastrophe. Baumgardner reportedly looked Claressa dead in the eye and dared her to do something about the tension, uttering words that no world-class fighter takes lightly. In a fraction of a second, the professional boundary evaporated. Claressa did not wait for a referee, she did not wait for a ring bell, and she certainly did not care about the suits in attendance. A strike was thrown, chaos erupted, and within seconds, security guards, trainers, and innocent bystanders were diving over velvet ropes to pull the two screaming champions apart. Drinks were spilled, expensive designer clothing was torn, and the pristine image of high-class sports entertainment was shattered into a million pieces right on the polished floor of a private VIP suite. It was a raw, unscripted moment of pure aggression that left everyone in the room stunned. But while the internet went into an absolute frenzy over the initial rumors of the brawl, the corporate response behind the scenes was swift, calculated, and deeply sinister. Enter Jake Paul's most valuable promotions, MVP, a powerhouse company that prides itself on disrupting traditional boxing, found itself in a massive public relations nightmare. Their exclusive top-tier event had just been turned into a viral street fight by two of the biggest names in the sport. But instead of handling it internally or trying to mediate the disaster, MVP made a decision that sent shockwaves through the industry. They issued a cold, public, zero-tolerance statement that effectively banned Claressa Shields from ever stepping foot at another MVP event. They painted Claressa as an unhinged, violent aggressor who unprovokedly attacked a fellow athlete in a private setting. The narrative was clear. Claressa was the villain, the bully who could not control her temper, while Baumgardner was the innocent victim who was merely defending her dignity. Executives went on media tours expressing their deep disappointment, claiming that Claressa's actions reflected poorly on women's sports as a whole. They openly publicly shamed her, demanding an apology and framing her as a liability to the entire industry. For any normal athlete, a public blacklisting by a major promotion like MVP would be a career-ending blow. It would force them into hiding, force them to issue a PR-written apology, and spend months begging for forgiveness. But if MVP thought they could intimidate the girl from Flint, Michigan into submission, they severely miscalculated who they were dealing with. Claressa did not hide. She did not draft a humble apology letter. In fact, she did the exact opposite. She opened fire on the entire promotional structure, exposing what she claims is a massive, coordinated smear campaign. In a series of explosive, unfiltered live streams and interviews, Claressa tore down MVP's clean corporate facade piece by piece. She dropped a bombshell that sent the boxing industry into a tailspin. MVP had allegedly tried to sign her to a lucrative promotional contract in the past. According to Claressa, she flat-out rejected their offer, choosing to remain independent and maintain full control over her brand. And ever since that rejection, she claims MVP has been harboring a bitter grudge, waiting for the exact right moment to destroy her reputation and push her out of the spotlight. Claressa revealed that the narrative spun by MVP and Baumgardner was an outright lie, going as far as to accuse them of legal defamation. She pointed out that there is clear video evidence of Baumgardner verbally threatening her first, aggressively advancing on her, and creating a hostile environment that forced Claressa to physically defend her personal space. She blasted the promotion for trying to assassinate her character while actively protecting their own roster of fighters, who routinely engage in chaotic pre-fight antics without ever facing a single ban or fine. The plot thickens even further when you look at the history between Claressa and MVP's flagship fighter, Amanda Serrano. Claressa called out how MVP, from the very moment they entered the women's boxing landscape, tried to push Serrano as the real judge of the sport. They attempted to hijack Claressa's trademarked brand, aggressively marketing their own athletes at the expense of Claressa's legacy. Claressa had to literally send legal cease and desist letters to stop them from using her branding, exposing a deep-seated corporate jealousy that had been festering long before the California brawl ever took place. So when Claressa stepped into the ring in Atlanta against Kaye, she was not just fighting for championship belts. She was fighting against a massive multi-million-dollar promotional machine that wanted nothing more than to see her fail. The pressure on her shoulders was immense. If she lost to Scott, her enemies would have celebrated her downfall. They would have used her defeat to permanently write her out of the history books, labeling her a washed-up, out-of-control fighter whose time had passed. Instead, Claressa delivered a performance that completely suffocated her critics. She came down to 160 pounds looking leaner, faster, and more dangerous than ever before. She put on a clinic of absolute violence, systematically breaking down a tough veteran in Kaye until Scott's own corner had to beg the referee to stop the fight in the 6th round. It was a flawless execution, a masterclass that reminded the entire world why she is the most decorated female fighter on the planet. But as the referee raised her hand and the crowd of 16,000 fans erupted into cheers, the look on Claressa's face was not one of simple relief. It was a look of pure, unadulterated vengeance. She knew that every executive who had tried to ban her, every promoter who had tried to silence her, and every rival who had talked trash on social media was watching that screen in absolute horror. She had just proven that no matter how many corporate bans you slap on her, no matter how many smear campaigns you launch, you cannot ban greatness. Taking the microphone in the middle of that ring, surrounded by the screaming crowd, Claressa did not give a typical politically correct post-fight speech. She turned the broadcast into an absolute courtroom, laying down the hammer on everyone who had tried to tear her down over the past few months. She stood tall in Atlanta, soaking in the love of a city that celebrates Black excellence, and delivered a message that rattled the very foundation of the sport. She let it be known that she is the undisputed #1 at 160 pounds, and that no Ring magazine ranking, no promotional manipulation, and no fake championship belts can change that objective fact. She openly mocked the idea that MVP could ban her from boxing, reminding the world that MVP does not run the sport, and that she is women's boxing. The crowd went wild, but the real shockwaves were felt far away from the arena, in the executive suites and training camps of her biggest enemies. The moment that speech ended, the battle lines were officially drawn. The fight against Kaye was over, but the war against Alycia Baumgardner and the promotional forces backing her had just entered its most dangerous phase yet. We are no longer just talking about sports. We are talking about a full-blown war for the soul, control, and future of women's combat sports, where millions of dollars, legal lawsuits, and career legacies are hanging in the balance. What happened in the immediate aftermath of that post-fight speech was an absolute media meltdown that sent corporate PR teams scrambling into damage control mode at 3 o'clock in the morning. Anonymous sources close to the situation reveal that executives at MVP were practically throwing their phones across the room, as Claressa systematically tore down their carefully constructed narrative live on air. While the suits were panicking in their high-rise offices, the internet was exploding with wild theories, leaked footage, and public commentary from every corner of the sports and entertainment universe. The public reaction was divided down the middle into two fiercely loyal camps. On one side, you had the purists and die-hard Claressa fans who celebrated her raw honesty and viewed her as a lone warrior standing up against a corrupt corporate machine. On the other side, you had the casual fans and MVP loyalists who condemned her actions as unprofessional and reckless. Pundits and sports podcasters immediately jumped on the bandwagon, analyzing every micro-expression and every word uttered during that fateful post-fight interview. Former athletes and commentators sat in their studio chairs looking completely stunned, admitting openly that they had never seen a rivalry in women's sports reach this level of genuine, unscripted hostility. Some commentators pointed out the obvious double standard in how the situation was being handled by the media and promotional bodies. They raised valid questions about why male fighters are routinely celebrated for launching chairs, throwing punches at press conferences, and engaging in chaotic backstage brawls to build pay-per-view hype, while female athletes are instantly blacklisted and vilified for displaying that exact same aggression. When male fighters tear apart a VIP section or slap an opponent during fight week, the promotions slap it on a promotional poster, monetize the clip, and charge $80 for the pay-per-view. But when Claressa Shields defends her honor in a private lounge after being verbally provoked, suddenly everyone wants to talk about decorum, sportsmanship, and corporate integrity. The hypocrisy was so thick you could cut it with a knife and the public saw right through it. In the days following the fight, the petty levels reached astronomical heights as Alycia Baumgardner decided to launch her own counter-offensive, turning social media into an active battleground. But instead of just sticking to standard boxing banter, Baumgardner elevated the feud into an all-out psychological warfare tactic that left fans utterly speechless. It started with a viral video that completely broke the internet, a calculated cinematic flex that looked like something straight out of a Hollywood crime drama. Baumgardner was spotted riding around town in a sleek, multi-$100,000 Rolls-Royce, surrounded by an unexpected alliance that no one in the boxing world saw coming. Sitting right alongside her were none other than featherweight queen Amanda Serrano and hip-hop legend Remy Ma. The trio was seen cruising through the city, bumping a fiery diss track where Remy Ma dropped lines specifically aimed at foes who do too much, while throwing subtle shade at Claressa's expenses. Do you realize how insane that team-up actually is? Remy Ma literally recruited two of the biggest female boxers on the planet, both of whom happen to have intense, deep-seated animosity toward Claressa Shields, just to film a cameo appearance for a music video treatment. They were all stacked together in a luxury vehicle, smiling, laughing, and throwing indirect jabs at the middleweight champion. It was a level of petty that required real budget, real planning, and a hilarious amount of dedication to hating. Fans could not believe what they were seeing, with commentary channels erupting in laughter over the sheer absurdity of three powerful women uniting under a single banner of pure antipathy toward Claressa. Claressa, of course, was not about to let a Rolls-Royce ride slide without delivering a lethal verbal counterpunch. She took to her own platform to mock the trio, calling them a pathetic, desperate coalition of haters who need to band together just to feel relevant in her presence. Claressa exposed what she claims is the real reason behind Baumgardner's obsession with her, an undeniable case of identity theft and stylistic jealousy. In a scathing rant that went viral within minutes, Claressa laid out a hilarious yet detailed breakdown of how Baumgardner has allegedly been stealing her entire blueprint for years. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, legal teams were sharpening their knives as the threat of courtroom battles began to loom large over the entire situation. Anonymous legal insiders leaked reports suggesting that Baumgardner's team was actively preparing a massive civil lawsuit against Claressa, alleging physical assault, emotional distress, and potential loss of earnings resulting from the VIP altercation. During a series of icy press appearances, Baumgardner refused to even speak Claressa's name, responding to questions about the fight with cryptic, ominous warnings about divine retribution and legal consequences. She repeatedly cited biblical quotes about facing consequences, making it clear that she has no intention of squaring up inside a boxing ring anytime soon when she can fight in a courtroom instead. When reporters asked her if she would ever step into the ring to settle the beef like a true fighter, Baumgardner scoffed at the idea, claiming she could easily knock Claressa out, but insisting that her focus was purely on high-paying marquee events, high-fashion endorsements, and mega-promotional deals. She openly dismissed the idea of ever fighting on a Claressa Shields undercard, proudly stating that she is a superstar in her own right who demands top billing and multi-million-dollar purses. She praised her own team, highlighting her status as an undisputed champion who brings the looks, the hooks, and the ultimate entertainment value to the sport. This rhetoric only added fuel to the fire, as fans began accusing Baumgardner of hiding behind lawyers, corporate protection, and weight class differences to avoid facing the most dangerous woman on the planet inside the squared circle. The public narrative quickly shifted from a simple sports rivalry into a complex corporate scandal involving alleged character assassination, promotional favoritism, and backroom financial dealing. Independent journalists began digging deeper into MVP's financial structure, raising questions about how the promotion selectively enforces its ethics policies. Leaked internal communications revealed that MVP executives were deeply concerned about the potential damage to their lucrative streaming deals and corporate sponsorships. They had promised family-friendly, high-grade sports entertainment to global media giants, and a wild unscripted brawl in an elite VIP lounge threatened to derail millions of dollars in pending promotional contracts. To protect their corporate partnerships, MVP had to make an example out of someone, and Claressa Shields was the perfect target. She was an independent entity, a fighter who refused to sign away her promotional rights, and a vocal critic of their business model. By slapping her with a public ban, MVP could claim moral superiority to their corporate sponsors while simultaneously punishing an athlete who dared to stand outside their control. But the strategy backfired spectacularly. Instead of isolating Claressa, the public ban turned her into an anti-establishment folk hero. Fans who were tired of overly polished, fake corporate athlete personas rallied behind Claressa, appreciating her refusal to play the political game or bow down to billionaire promoters. The comment sections across social media platforms were flooded with support for the Flint native, with users calling out MVP for their hypocritical stance and demanding that they lift the ban. The media campaign designed to destroy Claressa's reputation had accidentally elevated her status, making her upcoming fight announcements even more anticipated than before. Leaked reports from inside various training camps indicate that the tension has reached a point where fighters are actively taking sides, splitting gym environments and promotional stables into opposing factions. Boxers affiliated with MVP are reportedly instructed to avoid commenting on the situation publicly, while independent fighters are speaking out in support of Claressa's right to defend herself against corporate censorship. The sport of women's boxing has essentially been dragged into a civil war, where every press conference, every weigh-in, and every media appearance is fraught with the danger of another explosive confrontation breaking out at a moment's notice. Through all the chaos, the lavish lifestyle flexes, the Rolls-Royce video cameos, the legal threats, and the corporate press releases, one undeniable truth remains intact. The hostility between these two elite athletes is real, volatile, and entirely uncontrollable. There are no scriptwriters directing this drama, no PR handlers managing the fallout, and no security detail strong enough to guarantee peace if these two forces ever cross paths again in a closed room. The entire industry is holding its breath, waiting to see what happens when the legal threats wear off, the corporate bans fail, and the ultimate moment of truth finally arrives. As we hurtle deeper into the chaotic wasteland of this unprecedented sports disaster, the long-term financial, legal, and structural fallout is beginning to send massive shockwaves through the entire multi-billion-dollar combat sports ecosystem. Promoters, network executives, and legal analysts are currently locked in emergency boardrooms, desperately trying to calculate the collateral damage of a scandal that refuses to die. What started as a heated VIP argument has now mutated into a full-scale institutional nightmare that threatens to derail major pay-per-view schedules, jeopardize corporate streaming partnerships, and trigger unprecedented court battles that could rewrite boxing contracts forever. The financial stakes in this situation are frankly astronomical, with millions upon millions of dollars hanging by a delicate thread. Major streaming platforms and television networks that recently poured massive capital into broadcasting women's boxing are suddenly finding themselves caught in a high-stakes ethical tightrope walk. Corporate sponsors who signed off on multi-year marketing deals are voicing deep concerns behind closed doors, petrified that the volatile animosity between Claressa Shields and Alycia Baumgardner will spill over into future live broadcasts, creating unpredictable liabilities that no insurance policy can cover. Leaked internal memos from broadcast partners indicate that producers are actively drawing up emergency contingency plans for future live events. Security protocols are being entirely revamped, with strict orders to establish red zone exclusion perimeters around private VIP suites, green rooms, and fighter holding areas. Networks are quietly demanding that promotional companies implement mandatory cooling-off periods and separate physical logistics for high-risk athletes during fight week, all to prevent another unscripted brawl from exploding live on air. Meanwhile, the legal threats that once sounded like simple posturing on social media are rapidly transforming into a terrifying legal reality. Leading sports law experts who have been analyzing the public statements from both camps suggest that if Alycia Baumgardner follows through on filing a formal civil assault lawsuit, it could open up a massive can of legal worms for everyone involved. A formal legal discovery process would mean subpoenaing private text messages, hotel security camera footage, VIP guest lists, and confidential internal emails between MVP executives and venue management. If those internal communications are ever dragged into open court, the resulting disclosures could expose the ugly, unvarnished truth about how promotional politics actually operate behind closed doors. It could reveal whether corporate entities actively manipulated security arrangements, selectively leaked biased narratives to the press, or conspired to blackball an independent athlete out of financial spite. Claressa Shields' legal team has already signaled that they are more than ready to file massive counterclaims for character defamation, tortious interference, and loss of business earnings, setting the stage for a scorched earth courtroom battle where nobody walks away clean. While lawyers sharpen their arguments, the athletic commissions find themselves backed into an impossible corner. State athletic boards, which are responsible for issuing fighting licenses and enforcing ethical standards, are under immense pressure to intervene and establish hard precedent. If a commission steps in to formally discipline an athlete for an out-of-ring altercation that occurred at a non-sanctioned corporate event, it sets a wild, dangerous standard for the entire combat sports industry. Where does the regulatory oversight actually end? If an athlete gets into a verbal spat or a physical scuffle at a restaurant, a nightclub, or a private promotional party, does an athletic commission have the right to suspend their professional license and strip them of their livelihood? Promoters across the globe are terrified of the potential precedent because it could grant bureaucratic boards unchecked power to dictate the personal lives and off-duty conduct of independent contractors. Despite the dark cloud of legal probes and corporate bans hanging over her head, Claressa Shields continues to move like an unstoppable force of nature, completely ignoring the noise and plotting her next historical move. Rather than waiting around for MVP to lift their absurd ban or begging for corporate approval, Claressa is actively finalizing details for her next mega fight. She has made it abundantly clear that her sights are set squarely on unifying the remaining belts against British powerhouse Lauren Price in a blockbuster winter showdown that will once again draw millions of eyes to the middleweight division. Claressa's refusal to back down has completely upended the promotional power dynamic in women's sports. She has proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that a truly elite athlete does not need to sign away their soul, their brand, or their independence to a single promotional machine to command massive paydays and fill major arenas. By commanding 16,000 screaming fans in Atlanta on her own terms, Claressa demonstrated that her personal brand is vastly superior to any corporate entity trying to control her. On the other side of the aisle, Alycia Baumgardner finds herself navigating an increasingly treacherous public relations minefield. While she continues to flex her high-fashion lifestyle, parade in luxury vehicles, and align herself with pop culture icons, a growing segment of the core boxing fanbase is beginning to turn on her narrative. Fans are growing tired of the endless social media subtweeting, the cryptic biblical quotes, and the constant threats of legal action. The combat sports world operates on a very simple old-school code. When two world-class fighters have deep, genuine hatred for each other, you do not hire lawyers, The longer Baumgardner avoids discussing a potential fight with Claressa under the guise of weight class differences and legal proceedings, the louder the accusations of dodging will become. The tragedy of this entire situation is that the boxing world is currently witnessing one of the most compelling, authentic, and high-stakes rivalries in the history of women's combat sports. Yet promotional red tape and corporate egos are keeping it locked in a stalemate. The physical chemistry, the stylistic contrast, and the pure, unadulterated venom between these two champions would easily break pay-per-view records and sell out 90,000-seat stadiums anywhere on Earth. Imagine the electric atmosphere of a ring walk where Claressa Shields and Alycia Baumgardner finally stand face-to-face inside the squared circle, with no security guards, no velvet ropes, and no corporate suits to protect them. The build-up alone would shatter every social media metric, capturing the attention of mainstream culture in a way that very few sporting events ever manage to achieve. It would be an absolute spectacle of violence, pride, and skill, a career-defining battle that would cement the winner as an undisputed icon for generations to come. Instead, fans are left watching a frustrating war of attrition fought through leaked press releases, court filings, and coordinated social media smear campaigns. The industry is standing at a critical fork in the road. Will common sense, athletic pride, and massive financial incentives eventually force these two camps to negotiate a historic compromise? Or will corporate greed, bitter egos, and legal warfare destroy the greatest matchup that women's boxing has ever seen? The clock is ticking down, and the entire combat sports community is waiting with bated breath to see who blinks first in this high-stakes game of chicken. One thing is absolute, undeniable fact. Claressa Shields has drawn her line in the sand, and she is not budging an inch for anyone. She has exposed the dirty underbelly of promotional politics, called out the fake personas dominating the sport, and reclaimed her rightful place at the top of the middleweight throne. Whether her enemies like it or not, Claressa Shields is women's boxing, and any pathway to true greatness in this sport inevitably has to run directly through her. The corporate bans can remain in place, the lawsuits can be filed, and the online smear campaigns can continue to run rampant. But when the dust finally settles and the smoke clears, history will only remember who actually stood tall inside the ropes when everything was on the line. And there you have it, family. That is the complete, unfiltered nuclear reality of the war currently destroying and redefining the entire landscape of women's combat sports. Claressa Shields just dropped the ultimate mic on her critics, reclaimed her middleweight throne, and exposed the dirty corporate machinery trying to silence her. But this story is far from over, and the fallout is only getting started. Now I need to hear from every single one of you in the comments section below. Do you think MVP and Alycia Baumgardner were completely out of line for slapping Claressa with an event ban? Or was her physical reaction in that VIP lounge crossing a line that can never be uncrossed? Will Baumgardner actually have the courage to step inside the ring and settle this beef like a true champion? Or is she going to hide behind lawyers, weight class differences, and corporate suits forever? Who do you truly side with in this toxic high-stakes civil war? Drop your thoughts, hot takes, and predictions down below. Let's get a real debate going in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive investigation into the darkest, funniest, and most chaotic corners of boxing drama, hit that like button right now. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on all notifications so you never miss a single update as this historic feud continues to blow up. Thank you for watching, stay tuned, and we will see you in the next one.